Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the PublishDrive Author Hour. For those of you who haven't been here before, PublishDrive Author Hour is a place for practical conversations about publishing strategy, distribution, metadata, and marketing, AI tools, platform tips, and the business side of being an author. In this episode, authors will learn why long-term publishing success often requires shifting from I published a book to I'm building an author business, and how that mindset affects metadata, distribution, pricing, backlist strategy, and decision making. And one of these things that we want to talk about is that mindset shift of going from this idea of I published a book to I'm building an author business, and thinking really strategically about what you're doing with your books and why. And some of you may remember in the last episode, I did talk about how my new book that I put out back in December was strategically designed as an experiment, not as I'm going to make a bunch of money on my book. And it's really important when you think about I'm publishing a book, recognizing what that means for you and what your goal with that book is. Because most authors, they begin with the story. They say, I have this great book, I have this great idea. And that's natural because that's why we wrote the book, right? We care about the characters, we care about the message in the story, we care about the reader experience and getting as many readers to read our books as possible. But what we don't recognize and we don't realize, and this is a conversation I've had a lot over the past 2 weeks. So the reason we've had a little gap in our episodes is that I went to the IBPA, the Independent Book Publishers Conference, in their publishing university. I was there in Portland, Oregon the week before. And then last week I was on vacation. I say that with air quotes for those of you who are just listening, because I went to a workshop where I was learning some healing tools and things like that to do emotional healing and things like that. So it was more my own personal stuff that I want to learn. But it was interesting to me because even there I had those conversations. I was sharing with the team this morning that everyone there was some kind of coach or business development person or something like that. And so all of them were really talking about, gosh, I'd like to write a book someday. And of course, at the IBPA conference, there were a lot of people who said, oh yeah, I want to, I have this book I've written. I want to get this book out to as many people. And they often don't understand that there's so much more to it than I published a book. And part of those conversations that I was having was with a variety of people at various stages in the writing business, in the industry of, well, we don't always recognize that what we're putting out is also a commercial product. And so, yes, it's the book of your heart. You love it. You want everyone to read it because you love this book. But at the end of the day, if your goal is to sell copies of the book, it's a commercial product. And so you have to look at really marketing and audience and all of that. And at the IBPA conference, one of the speakers, the keynote was Donald Miller with StoryBrand. And if you have a chance to listen to him speak and want to look him up, I highly encourage it, because one of the things that he said that I thought was super profound was this idea of people come to you because they have a problem that needs to be solved, and you have that solution. And so your book is that solution. And thinking about it in those terms of what problem are you solving? And I really found it interesting because so many of us, oh yeah, I wrote this book, it's a great book. But what does that, I wrote this book, it's a great book, how does that translate to the people who are going to be purchasing or reading your book or whatever you're going to be doing with that book? How is that filling their need? How is that making them or their lives better and solving a problem for them. And so as we think about that and we're like, okay, but yeah, I have this book and I see what you're saying. This is the problem my book solves. This is what my book is doing for my audience. This is why this book is important for my audience. But they don't understand that there's so many other things to think about, like metadata, pricing, distribution, marketing, what their launch strategy is, what their book description is, all of the reviews, how to handle their backlist, how to handle all the business pieces of writing. And it can feel overwhelming because, I don't know about you, but when I decided I wanted to write a book and go into publishing, it wasn't that I wanted to learn all this marketing stuff. I somehow actually didn't really want to do any of the marketing stuff because I didn't enjoy it. And it didn't seem like that was really what I wanted to do. That's not why I became an author. I didn't want to be a marketer. And yet that's one of the biggest jobs an author can do. Most of us came into this business because we love stories. We don't necessarily come into the writing business because we're excited to become small business owners. But once you publish and once you decide that I want my book to be something that people will buy, the business layer is part of the journey and you do become a business owner. And so it's so important to think about, what does that mean as a business owner? And one of the most common traps we fall into is treating publishing as one event. We think that publishing is about getting the book uploaded and launched. And then once we've done that, our job is done. We can just sit back and the money will just come in, right? We just sit there and we think, okay, here, book's out. Thank you, money. The problem is that is only the first step, really, because we have to launch a book, sure, but then there's that whole lifetime of the book. And so we have to think about what that event is and how to keep that from being just one-time book event of I launched my book to, okay, great. Now I've created this book system, this book ecosystem, all of these other events. I'm going to write the next book. I'm going to promote my book. I'm going to find other places for my book to be, for people to access that book. It's not a one-time event of just, I put the book out there. It's an ongoing process in your author business. And so the biggest mindset shift that we have to make when we're looking at our book as a product is from thinking of just the book as that one-time finished product event to thinking of it as this larger publishing ecosystem. So instead of thinking, oh, I published a book, now what? We have to think about, how does this book fit into my larger author business? What role does this book play in my catalog? How can I help the right readers find it? Where should this book be available? What can I learn from the available sales information? What can I improve over time? And I talk to a lot of authors who say this idea of, well, my book is for everyone. And I really loved in Donald Miller's talk that he gave, he just laughed at that idea of people saying, yeah, my book's for everyone, because it's not. Sure, everyone might enjoy your book, or it could appeal to a larger audience than just that small, narrow niche. But in order to more accurately target your book, in order to more accurately market your stories, you have to really ask yourself, who is this book for? What am I intending this book to do? Where do I intend for this audience to be? And how can I grow this as a business? Now, for those of you who are just like, you know what? I just wanted to write this book to give a legacy to my grandchildren. I don't care if it sells. Okay, great. None of this advice is for you. But for those of you who are saying, no, I want my book business to be a book business. I want that money to flow in. I want the people to have their lives touched by my message or my story, or have that book as something that people really love and cherish and look forward to the next stories. But in order to have that, you have to have that mindset shift of this is way bigger than just simply a book. And so what changes when you start thinking about my author business as opposed to I just wrote a book? The first thing you start thinking about is discoverability. Just publishing your book isn't enough. As I have said before, just because you published it doesn't mean the readers are going to find it. And it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get the sales come in. And that's where metadata matters. I've mentioned that big word metadata, and it's kind of a scary word. I remember when I first encountered this idea of metadata, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger than, I don't even know what this word means. And breaking it down simply, metadata is your title, your subtitle, your description, categories, keywords, your author name, your series information, pricing, all of the things that communicate what your book is about. Metadata is what helps stores discover your book. It helps stores understand what your book is. So it helps the stores know who to put your book in front of. And it isn't about tricking the algorithm or gamifying things or trying to twist the system. It's really about how do you accurately portray your book, accurately portray your story, and position it in such a way that it's going to get in front of the ideal client. Because as I was saying before about, you think your book is for everyone, but it's not. And so narrowing down that audience, who's the audience that's most likely to buy your book? And so even though you're like, my book can help everyone, ask yourself, but who's most likely going to buy it? Like if you're in the store, and I'll just share this experience. I was at the IBPA conference, and they had a lovely reception at the Powell's bookstore, which is the largest indie bookstore in America. It's huge. It's a full city block. And I was browsing. I was looking for a very specific book. And then I turned the corner and I saw the end cap. And so all these books on the end, prominently displayed. And let me tell you something. I was the ideal reader for a lot of those books because I was like, oh, I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. Yes, I need that one. And so $100 later, I went out with all of these books and not the one I was specifically looking for, but that's because I didn't have it. And I tell you this story because we all have that experience of going into the bookstore. When you go into the bookstore and you're excited about, I want to see these books, I want to get this book. What are the books that draw you that you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go home with this book? That is what metadata is for your book. It's about knowing who in that market is going to see that book and be like, oh my goodness, I have to have this book. I cannot leave the store with the book. And, like I said, I spent $100 on books because those books were very targeted towards me and my interests. And I just started unpacking and putting things away yesterday. And I was like, why did I buy all these books? I don't have time to read these. It'll be a while before I get to them. But in that moment, it just triggered that, oh my goodness, I need to have that book. And that is what you want to do with your book and your marketing. And so thinking about, sure, anyone could buy your book and enjoy it, but who is that person that's going to see the book on the shelf and be like, I must have this book? And it all starts with your metadata, because your metadata is saying who must have this book. And your metadata is telling the stores, this is where you want to place the book, because this is where the person who is going to get the most excited about my book is going to experience it. And that is also true even for when you are looking at books in an online bookstore, when you're scrolling. And again, how many of you're scrolling through the bookstore, looking at the books, and suddenly you have a bunch more books in your cart than you planned? And one of the things we talk about, like with Amazon and their recommendations and their algorithms. Once you put something in your cart, Amazon says, and here are more things you would like. And so that is all based on the metadata and all based on what you have told the algorithm to prioritize about your book. And so how many of you have looked at those recommended reads and said, oh, no, that isn't right. That book isn't related to this. Well, that's because the author or the publisher didn't have their metadata correct. And so it was sending that book to the wrong audience. And what's sad is that book just got put in front of me, but I'm not interested because I wasn't the right audience for that book because their metadata was wrong. On the flip side of that, again, you're checking out and Amazon saying, and we thought you might like this. Well, that's because the metadata of that book and what the author said this book is about was exactly on target of what I wanted. And yes, Amazon gets me like that a lot. Sometimes I really do just quickly, boom, I'm only buying the one thing because it's so easy for me to get caught up in this. Oh my goodness, there's so many good books. So really think about that strategy of who is going to buy your book, who is going to get excited seeing that. And so that's where you want to think about distribution as your strategy. Where is your book available? Are you exclusive or wide? Are you reaching readers in multiple stores or countries? Are there formats or channels you haven't explored yet? Do your distribution choices match your goals? And this doesn't have to be one or the other. This is you exploring your ideas and where your readers are. And so, for example, my book, I am getting ready to put it in print. And part of why I'm putting it in print is a previous series that I have. What happened was my first book in the series is not in print. Actually now, and I ran this really great ad campaign and everyone was excited about my book and it was really wonderful. And then, as often happens, I realized what I had done wrong, and that is my first book wasn't in print. And so the comments on my ad was, hey, this sounds like a great story, but I only read print. And I'm like, oh. And so I need to get that book in print. And that's why actually this new book that I have out, that is my next priority step, is getting that as a print cover, getting that book available in print format, because what I know about my target audience is that they prefer to read their books in print. And so for you, if you're looking at who your target audience is, how do they prefer to consume their materials? Is it print? Is it ebook? Is it audiobook? Is it all of the above? For me, I love audiobooks. As a listener, I like to listen to audiobooks. And if I like that audiobook well enough, I want it in print. And, funny story again, this past week of this retreat I was on, I had listened to the author, read the author's ebook, but I enjoyed it so much that I then wanted a copy in print. And then I got a signed copy, and that was fantastic for me. And that's me knowing my habits and my tastes as a reader. And think about your genre, what you're writing. What are those habits and tastes of your readers? Do they prefer the ebook? Do they prefer the print? Do they prefer audio? Do they want all three? Are they like me as a consumer where if I like it in ebook or audiobook, I want it in print? And my readers are so funny because a lot of my readers won't even read ebooks. And so they're like, please just give it to me in print. And learning that about your particular readers, because there are other genres where I've talked to authors who said, yeah, print just doesn't do very well for me. My readers prefer the ebook. Well, learn that about your readers. And again, with distribution channels, where are your readers at? What languages do they speak? What language do they want it in? Is it worth getting translated into a different language? All these factors are about that strategy of understanding your readers and finding a distribution strategy that will get your book in front of those readers. And one of those things, I just mentioned some other books that I have published, thinking about your backlist and how can you get that backlist in front of readers, because it can keep working for you. And as you get more books out, so this book I was telling you all about, I have book number 2. It's in the editing phase. And then I realized, okay, well, wait, I have this book 1. I need to think about book 1 more strategically, which is why I'm recovering it and doing a few other different things to it. Because now it's the strategy of, okay, now I'm going to have this series to start marketing. And so that means taking a look at creating a series page and changing some of my blurbs and doing things to make it all cohesive to attract that reader, so that when the reader sees the book, they're like, oh man, I need this book. Oh, and there's all these other books. Oh, great. Oh, this author also wrote all of these other books. Cool. And now suddenly you have someone purchasing your backlist, purchasing more and more of your books in different formats, if that is the reader behavior, and recognizing that just because you had one book that was kind of a dud of a launch, like I said, I knew that book when I launched it, it was going to be a dud launch, but I also knew that I had a plan. And so don't think of, oh, I just had a really dud launch, of, oh, this book failed. Okay, well, what's the next book? And what's the next book after that? And how do you tie that all together into a cohesive plan that suddenly starts to make sense? And then as you have more publishing assets, then you can go through, you can take them and you can use them and start making your books more profitable. And even those books that weren't very profitable, I hear from authors all the time where maybe they had a book several years ago that they launched and it wasn't profitable, but now that they've had other releases and other things come out, they can go back, they can adjust some of the things in their blurb and their metadata, all those things. And suddenly, instead of having this dud that was a launch, later that becomes an extremely profitable book for them. And so just because you have one book that doesn't do as well as you planned, don't let that be the story for your book forever, because it can continue to succeed. It can have a life of its own. And that's where you can start to use your information and your data instead of panicking. It's so hard when you see those low sales numbers to say, oh, I failed or I didn't well. But use that information as a clue. Okay, you had a dud launch. What about your launch didn't work for you? Where weren't you connecting with readers? What is surprising you? What isn't surprising you? Really dig deep into that information of what worked, what didn't work, what can I improve last time? And rather than thinking of this is a failure or this is a success, think of it as, oh my goodness, I just got all this data. I really enjoy Russell Nolte, who has a Substack called Hapitalist. He's always talking about all these different data points in terms of looking at the books, looking at the launches, looking at the things that he does that do well, that do poorly, and thinking it in terms of, okay, I just got this data on, here are the things that worked for me this time. Here's what I'm going to do differently. Here is how I'm going to make my publishing process successful for me. And that's what you should all do as well, is that it isn't that you wrote a bad book. It isn't that you had a bad cover. It's that you've learned something from this piece of the process that you can then apply to your next book. And then you'll learn something from that book. And then you'll apply it to the next book and the next book after that. And you just continue learning and evolving and adapting your process. The goal isn't to stare at your numbers and panic. The goal is to look for patterns that can help you make better decisions about your writing future and your publishing business. And so rather than chasing different trends and just chasing what you want to do, you start to make your decisions based on goals. Like, what is it that you want out of your publishing business? And that's something that I talked about in the very beginning, is what is your goal for publishing? Is it to have this book for your grandchildren? Is it to create a publishing legacy? Is it because you have a particular message that you want to share with the world? Is it because you have a story that you love, you think other people will love? Is it because you want to make a bunch of money? What are those things that's important to you as a publishing business, and really sit down and think about what your goals are and what your values are as a publishing professional. Because then when you look at all of this data and you look at what project to work on next, then that makes those decisions a lot easier. Because when you know your goals, it becomes easier to decide which opportunities are worth your time and which are just distractions, and to be clear on that. And if, for example, I have a passion project that I'm low-key working on that I recognize isn't going to be Danica's big moneymaker, this is just something I want to do for fun. And that's kind of what that other book I was telling you about, where that kind of started, is this is just an experiment and I want to try it, and I'm experimenting and I'm in my play stage. And that's amazing, because I don't have the pressure of I have to make X amount of dollars for it to be worth it. And some of you do. Some of you have in your head, I need to make X amount of dollars. I need to have this level of performance. But knowing your goals, knowing your data, that's where you make that decision. That's where you make that decision of, okay, I'm not going to work on my passion project. I'm going to work on this other project that I know is going to make me a lot of money. And they're all valid decisions, but it's a decision that you have to make for your business and do it in a way that honors what your goals are. And this is where PublishDrive fits in, because we help authors and publishers manage parts of the publishing business from one place. And when I was at the conference, I was talking to some different people who are very similar to me. They got into publishing because they wanted to write books and tell stories, and they didn't want to do all the business end. And so for me, the convenience of PublishDrive is, rather than figuring out all these dashboards and doing all these different things in all the different places, I go to one place, one dashboard, I put everything in there, and PublishDrive sends it out to all the different stores, and I don't have to do it. And then it sends me all my sales reports, and it's all in one place, and I don't have to do anything else. And so as you look at those tools, and as I look at what PublishDrive can do from one dashboard, to me, that's very powerful. And to me, it's the convenience of, yeah, maybe I am paying a little more than if I was doing it myself for now, because I think eventually it's going to be so worth what I'm spending, because I'm not having to manage all these things. But for me, that convenient of, okay, this is all taken care of for me. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do it in multiple places. It's all right there. And that's something that I want everyone to keep in mind, is what is it that you value and what you need? If you need that time so you can do more marketing or you can do more writing, that saved time of having everything in one dashboard is so important. And so, again, where are those readers? Where are they reading their books? Are they people who want to be able to read their books in different formats? Are they people in different countries? What countries are they in? And PublishDrive gets your books to those readers, to those countries, to those different stores. And it's up to you to decide, are your readers in those stores? Are your readers in those countries? Because that's something we can get you there. And at PublishDrive, we work with authors and publishers who are thinking about these questions. Where do I want my books to be available? How can I improve my metadata? What can I learn from my sales and information? How can I manage my publishing business without feeling scattered over a dozen different places? And again, that's my value. But what's your value? What are the things you need for your publishing business? And that's why this series exists. That's why we created PublishDrive Author Hour, because we want you to understand that business side of publishing one piece at a time, and one little step that you can take, and ways that you can think about your business as a business and accomplishing the business things that you want with your writing, whatever those goals are. And if your goal is not to have a publishing business, how can we support you in that? And so today's practical takeaway is choose a business owner action today. Think about your writing in your book as a business. Maybe it's reviewing your book description. When was the last time you went back through your book descriptions? Look at your categories, your pricing, where your book is distribution, what sales information you have, and what patterns are there in your sales information, and whether or not your book makes sense, and can it be expanded into another format? And really at the core, as you're looking at those questions, if you haven't asked yourself, who is my audience? Why do they need my book? Where does that audience live? Go back and ask those questions first and really do some research into what that audience looks like. Who is going to buy this book? And really dial down into what is your purpose in having your publishing business. You don't have to overhaul your entire publishing business this week. You can choose one book, one area, one simple task. And so as we close today, I want to just let you know that we're here for questions, comments. So if there's something that you want to know, please feel free, leave a comment, ask your questions. And if you have ideas for future lives, let me know. I am planning on bringing some guests, and we're going to have a bunch of people here that are experts telling you what you need to know about having a thriving publishing business. And so if you have those questions, if you're like, can we get an expert on this topic? The answer is probably. And so don't be shy in asking for what you need or what you would like to learn. And we're going to do our best to do that for you, because this is a business and this is something that we all want to help each other succeed in. And so think about what is something you want to understand better. So in the next episode, we're going to be talking about what things that people can do between book launches to build their author business. And what are the things that you can do if you don't have a book out right now? Maybe you're writing the next book. How can you get that book in front of more people? And so we're going to talk about that, answer any questions you have. And like I said, if you do have other ideas of the topics you would like to address, things you'd like to talk about, we're here for you. And make sure you are liking, subscribing to PublishDrive and to our channels, and make sure that you are following us so that you can get more updates on when our next opportunity is and all of the things going on. We do have on June 1st a webinar with our customer service team talking about PublishDrive and some things that you can do to be successful with PublishDrive. And so if that is something that you want to explore and learn about, the topic that they're going to be discussing is common book review issues and how to avoid them. And it will be at 6 o'clock Central European Time on June 1st. And if you would like to register for that webinar, you can go ahead to PublishDrive.com and to our blog, and that information is right there. I'll also post it in the notes when we're finished. So go ahead and take that information. We will share it. And if you can't make it, you can still go ahead and sign up and receive the replay, or we'll have the replay here on YouTube within a few days afterwards. So we have that for you. And as always, PublishDrive Author Hour is here for education, strategy, and general guidance. So if you need help with your PublishDrive account, or you're having a specific book issue or customer service issue, please make sure you reach out to our support team through official support channels, because I can't help you. I don't have access to that information, but they are more than happy to help you. And if you do have future issues that you want us to talk about in terms of avoiding support issues, we can talk about that too. So we're definitely here for you. We want to make this a great experience for all of you to find ways that you can succeed. We know that it is a tough business, and it's also a lot easier if you have ways of being supported, and we're here to support you as best as you can. Have a great day, and I will see you again next week.